أعوذ بالله أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. I seek refuge, protection with Allah from Satan, the rejected enemy. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. With the name Allah, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah. I bear witness that there is no God except Allah, and there is none worthy of worship besides Him. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The prayers and the peace be upon him. Dear beloved listeners, believers, guests, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. That is, God's peace be upon you and his mercy and his blessings. Today is January 16th, 2024. We're still in the Dr. King celebration mind. And so tonight, our topic is going to be on Dr. Martin Luther King and American Muslims. What are our similarities? We have some ways we do have some difference in thinking, but that is quite small compared to the big picture. So there's so much to cover tonight. We'll not be able to cover it all, I don't think. Uh, I'm sure with hopefully the questions and comments that will come from our listeners, we should have a rich, robust, um, informational discussion. We want to share information. Though this is ta'aleem, and ta'aleem typically means teachings, instructions, teaching and learning session, and it is centered around, we may think, Islam, and it is Islam, but this is going to be from a more of a social aspect. But you cannot have a social aspect unless there is a spiritual connection as well, because we are holistic human beings. We are not separate. We're not disconnected from our social life and our spiritual life and our educational life. They are not disconnected. So we say Alhamdulillah, and that means the perfect praise belongs to God. We're going to try this discussion tonight on Dr. Martin Luther King and American Muslims. I want to begin reading something from Imam W.D. Muhammad. And this goes back to a talk he had given early in his mission, but it's, I think, quite relevant. Is this the right one? I had two or three of them I had pulled up. Yeah, here it is here. This is from 1982. Uh, and Imam Muhammad was asked a question. It doesn't give the city, but Imam was asked a question. He said, would you comment on the contributions made by the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and what your opinion is on having his birthday as a national holiday? Now, we know it was not until 1983 when Ronald Reagan made Dr. King's birthday an official national holiday. So this year is about a year or so before that happened, before President Ronald Reagan signed that document. And Imam Muhammad's reply to the question again was, he wanted to know Imam Muhammad's comments on the contributions made by Dr. Martin Luther King and on his birthday or potential birthday being a national holiday. Imam Muhammad said, like most African Americans and most other humanly sensitive Americans, I have been touched by the life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I felt that he was an extraordinary leader a compassionate man, a spiritually moved man with very deep human sensitivities. I felt that he was a moral aggravation in America and at the same time moral nourishment for the American people. I didn't always agree with him because I followed the Islamic religion and our views differed sometimes. But on the whole, I was in agreement with him. And I think and I think the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, as far as he was from the civil rights principles, had great respect and admiration for Dr. King. In fact, I believe they had that respect and admiration for each other. Imam Muhammad goes on to say, Dr. King had faith in the future of the good American people, and he believed that his race, on the whole, represented the good American people and that their aspirations were human, noble, and healthy. And he felt that because of the inevitable movement of goodness, there was the opportunity of hope for equal justice. He, Dr. King, that is, felt this justice would come, and I accept him as a kind of social prophet, not a religious prophet as we understand prophet in our religion, but kind of a social prophet, as with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I accept the Honorable Elijah Muhammad too as a kind of social prophet. They did a wonderful job, and I think we have to remember them. I don't want to think the Nation of Islam, the American Muslim mission as we call it now, will forget the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's great moral contributions and his calls to industry and productivity. Neither would we forget Malcolm or any of our bygone heroes. I don't want to see us forget any of them. I think it would be better to have a national holiday in honor for all those great stars of that particular time rather than just to have it honoring one, Dr. King. I don't think Dr. King's movement would have been successful without the agitation that came from the Nation of Islam. So I have some hesitation about asking for a national holiday in just the name of Dr. Martin Luther King, but if it comes, it will please me too. That was Imam W.D. Muhammad speaking in 1982, which is 1 year before Ronald Reagan, President Ronald Reagan, signed the holiday into being. So we accept that, but what Imam Muhammad was doing, he was being very uh, um, conscious to show connections and similarities. And that's going to be the thrust of our conversation tonight. Uh, People often want to divide, and the old saying, what is that? Divide and conquer. They want to keep the Muslims over here, the Christians over there, Dr. King over there, and different movements separated. But we're going to show tonight, inshallah, God willing, the connections, the continuity of this flow of life. So we have to uh, ask for your patience and then ask you to sign on to the Audio. Can you hear me now? It said on Facebook you lost the audio. Now, on the phone can hear me, but they typed on the Facebook screen they lost the audio. Okay? Is the sound okay now, Brother Fareed? Just say yes or no, so I know. Okay, good. They can hear me now. Okay. Yeah, technology, you know. What can you say? You say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim and keep on going. Okay. So yeah, I was getting ready to say a lot of people don't know that Dr. Martin Luther King's birth name was not Martin. His birth name was Michael King. And his father's name was also Michael King. But his father traveled over around the world, I guess, and he was and who they now call Daddy King or Dr. King's father. Um, he was inspired when he learned about Martin Luther. And if you know your church history, Martin Luther was the one who wrote the theses and nailed them on the door. And they say he's the father of Protestantism because they protested. Protestant mean protested. And they protested against the domination of the Catholic Church led by Martin Luther. And so Daddy King was inspired by Martin Luther and changed his name from Michael King to Martin Luther King. And when he came back, his son, who we now know as Dr. Martin Luther King, was 5 years old. He changed his name also. And so now we have the name Martin Luther King. So there's a lot of good history there, to know about these travels, these world travels of Dr. King, of his father, and another person who I want to interject into the conversation is Dr. Howard Thurman, Thurman. We should know this man. He's one of the great African American theologians that we have had. And it was Howard Thurman who met Gandhi. Dr. Martin Luther King never met the man Gandhi. He met Gandhi's teachings, but he never met Gandhi. But if you look up Howard Thurman, Dr. Howard Thurman, he wrote some good books, one called Jesus and the Disinherited and other books. When Howard Thurman, I think in 1935, 1930s, I said, just build the safe side. You can find it out the exact year. He carried a delegation with him overseas. Howard Thurman was having integrated churches a long, long time ago. And Howard Thurman himself is African American, but a highly regarded scholar, a theologian and scholar, yes. And so when he met Gandhi and they had a discussion, Gandhi said to Howard Thurman, Islam is better suited for African Americans. Back then, probably said Negro, probably said colored. I'm not sure what the label was. But Mahatma Gandhi, told Howard Thurman, Islam is better suited for the Negro in America than Christianity. This is the history. Yep. And once again, I got to say this here so often. Whatever I share with you on a Tuesday Talim, you do not have my permission to take it wholesale. You must check it out. So that's a constant theme here. Yeah. Michael Sahir says so and so, but check it out. I may have made a mistake. So now, Howard Thurman received the suggestion from Gandhi that Islam was better suited for the Negro, African American, than Christianity because of the brotherhood of Islam and all that. Howard Thurman did not accept the recommendation. So what Gandhi told him, well, first, Howard Thurman, he rebutted, speaking about how the Indians were under the oppression of the British, right? But Howard Thurman said, no, he would not invite his people to Islam. He will still with Christianity. Then Gandhi said, well, if you're going to stay with Christianity, at least go back and use it in a way to help solve the problem. This is history here, dear people. And so why is that so important? Because Howard Thurman was a teacher of Dr. Martin Luther King. There's already been given instructions from Gandhi, or recommendation, I should say, from Gandhi to Howard Thurman to accept Islam for us, but it didn't happen. And just a little background, I'm kind of diverging a little bit, but Howard Thurman, his grandmother, I think her name was Nancy Ambrose. I'm pretty sure it was. Nancy Ambrose was his grandmother, and she was a free slave. And when Howard was a little boy, she would have Howard to read the Bible to her. But when he got to certain parts of the Bible, she would stop him and wouldn't let him read it. Let me see, can I find it? Because I got that in my book, The Man Behind the Man, The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Man Behind the Man. It's in there. Yeah, so Nancy Ambrose. Let me just read this to you, because all this ties into Dr. King and the Muslim community. So here, now you can find this in Howard Thurman's book called Jesus and the Disinherited on page 30 and 31. So Howard Thurman, he shares how his grandmother, Nancy Ambrose, her slave experience shaped her approach to the Bible. Her slave experience shaped how she approached the Bible. As a 9-year-old, Thurman read the Bible to his illiterate grandmother 2 or 3 times a week. For some unknown reason, she never let Thurman read to her the Pauline verses of the Bible. Finally, one day, Thurman learned why. He says this in his book. You see again, no audio? Can y'all hear me on Facebook? I don't know what to say. It's showing, well, I may have to keep going. You can, okay, we got a yes. Okay, thank you. Someone typed in no audio. Okay, maybe that's an old note. Okay, back to the book. Howard Thurman speaking. He says, when I was older and half through college, I chanced to be spending a few days at home near the end of summer vacation. With a feeling of great temerity, I asked her one day why it was that she would not let me read any of the Pauline letters. What she told me I should never forget. This is her quote. This is from his grandmother, Nancy Ambrose. She said, during the days of slavery, The master's minister would occasionally hold services for the slaves. Old man McGee was so mean that he would not let a Negro minister preach to his slaves. Always the white minister used as his text something from Paul. At least two, at least 3 or 4 times a year, he used as a text, slaves, be obedient to them that are your masters, as unto Christ. Then he will go on to show how it was God's will that we were slaves, and how, if we were good and happy slaves, God will bless us. And she says, I promise my maker that if I ever learned to read, and if freedom ever came, I would not read that part of the Bible. So Howard Thurman got this going on too, right? His grandmother. It's like giving him something he said he would never forget. So again, Howard Thurman is the one that met Gandhi in person. He was a professor for some classes for Dr. King. And Howard Thurman and Dr. King's Daddy King were around the same age. Yes. When we look at the life, the African American journey, the sojourn, and I'm going to read another comment here from Imam Muhammad because I'm still setting the groundwork. This is a little bit longer, but I think it's worthwhile reading. Make sure I got the right one. I have so many things pulled up here. Yes, okay. This is from April 25th, 1979, a fourth Sunday hookup. I know your brothers and sisters who are old enough, you all remember the man, right? On fourth Sunday hookups, you get there 6, 7, 8 hours. Easy. I know y'all remember that. Well, this is from one of those fourth Sunday hookups. Again, the date is April 25th, 1979. It's a little bit, it's not too long, not too long. Email says, that's exactly what happened in America. Enemy forces took over the clean freedom struggle of our ancestors and turned it into materialism, artificial race pride, a black consciousness that's really racism, and racial supremacy. They robbed our ancestors of their just struggle. So the man making making a good point here, right? He said, the enemy forces took over our freedom struggle, the freedom struggle of our ancestors, and turned it into materialism, artificial race pride, a black consciousness that's really racism and racial supremacy. They robbed our ancestors of their just struggle. Imam says, two leaders stand out in recent history as fighters for the old spirit of the ancestors. This is so beautiful. Imam, he said they robbed us, but he said there's two leaders we got in recent history. This is 1979. Imam said this, who were fighters for the old spirit of the ancestors. He says the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. These two men represented the extreme poles of what we wanted in this country. You know, right? One pole over here, one pole over there, right? The extreme poles. One represented nationalism or separatism, and the other civil rights or integration. Both were really on the same case. They had inherited the works of their father, the slave ancestry that would not give up. That's the work we have inherited from our fathers. The inner dignity, okay. Let me see. Yes, I think I missed the part. I did. He said these two men represented the extreme poles of what we wanted in this country, the inner dignity and the outer comfort. Yes, the inner dignity and the outer comfort. Those were the extreme poles. And the two men, one represented nationalism or separatism, that's the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, right? And the other, civil rights or integration, Dr. King. Both were really on the same case. They had inherited the works of their father, the slave ancestry that would not give up. These two great men kept us on some sensible, solid ground until their passing. When God took them away, the bottom fell out from under us. In fact, there was no bottom there anyway, just the influence of those two strong personalities. And once that influence was taken out of the society, we just came apart. The man says, God did not fail us. God did not leave us. He's been with us all the time. He never left us. We let our eyes close on the direction that had been pointed out to us in strong ancestral leadership, the direction inherited by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Dr. King. He said, I must give both their names because neither of them alone can represent the freedom struggle of our ancestors. You may have tied this into our ancestors, our slave ancestors, right? He goes on to say, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad represented one side of what we wanted, and Dr. King represented the other. Dr. King realized in the late years of his life that he only had been representing one side, and he began trying to get into the business of the other side. But God didn't choose him to get into that side. He chose him for the side that he mastered. When he tried to struggle into the other side, God took him away from us. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad saw the end of his one sided revolution. And when he started to speak to the other side, God saw fit to take him away also. But Almighty God united the two spirits in me. This is the Imam speaking. The two spirits of Dr. King and his father, Imam is saying, Almighty God united the two spirits in me. I have no problem with balance because I was free to set my own stage. And I set it in balance as God intended it to be. I spoke in recognition of the spirit of the ancestors as it was demonstrated in the leadership of Dr. King and in the leadership of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. 20 years ago, I recognized there was a need for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's spirit and the spirit of Dr. King of the Civil Rights Movement to come together because they were spirits of one life force. They should be together, not separated by a one-sided vision. And as pointed out by my brother here, Brother Fareed, yes, both the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Dr. Martin Luther King were both from Georgia. And when they met, when Dr. King went to the home of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, I think in 1966, they did not give a lot of news reports. They did make a comment that there were two boys from Georgia. So there's some similarities here I want to point out. Yes, both Dr. Martin Luther King and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad were both from Georgia. But if we take it and look a little bit further, not only were they both from Georgia, both men looked outside of the American mind to get help. And I don't think it's a coincidence that both of them got help from men from India, when now modern day Pakistan now. You think it's a coincidence that both men came from Georgia? And Dr. King, he reached out to Gandhi, and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad reached out to Mr. W.D. Farad. That's not a coincidence. Give me one little break here. We're seeing connections here. Both knew they could not trust the knowledge from America. Just put it directly. They could not trust knowledge rooted in the same society. We say this often, and I repeat it again. If a man won't treat you right, he won't teach you right. And both knew they had to go outside of, so Allah blessed them to go outside of the American thinking to get their guidance. This is a very special point for us to keep in mind. So do not allow those who write books, I don't care if it's written by an African American, but they don't have the mind or the freedom in their thinking to unite where we have commonality at, then you have to be very careful in accepting whatever they offer. Be very suspect of what they offer. Because Dr. King and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad were like two peas in a pod. They had different strategies, and that's where they disagreed or had their divergence of thought in their strategies. But their goal was the same, was identical. You should never forget that. That's what Imam Muhammad said, they should be together, not separated by one-sidedness. They should be together. What they call it, good cop, bad cop kind of scenario, right? But the one says and they show that Dr. King as being the nice, sweet, good cop, and Elijah Muhammad being the firm cop. But both cops gonna take you to jail. Now, outside of that cop police analogy, both men wanted freedom, justice, and equality for their people. So we have to see them as really working in tandem. And as we mentioned before, they did meet. They met at the home of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. They tried to meet, I found this out today, they tried to meet in 1958, but Dr. King said his schedule was too busy at that time. And you have to wonder, we have the face of the leadership, the face of the leader. But a lot of times their advisors and their board of directors and etc. can put pressure on them not to do what they did finally do some 8 years later. And that they came out with, there's an article that I found the other day too, of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Dr. King. When Dr. King went to Chicago, they agreed they were going to work on housing for their people. I'm see, can I find it here? Because I need to give you proof for what I say, because I'm not here just trying to just talk. I want to be able, to, if I can, to show you proof. I think I got it right here. To where when Dr. King went to Chicago, and I think he was shocked to find out Chicago was just as racist, if not more racist, than they were down in Georgia, down in the South. Yes, and both were under super surveillance of the FBI. Yes, they were. Yes, because J. Edgar Hoover, and he said it in his document, they could sense that it was time for a black messiah to come. And J. Edgar Hoover opened a vowed enemy to against Dr. King, opened a vowed enemy to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and their movements until they were trying to say that they can sense that they were afraid that somebody was going to rise up and unite the African American people and be like a black messiah. So they worked their program. They worked it. Yes, that's why I call COINTELPRO. COINTELPRO. I just okay. And that's a counterintelligence. It's called counterintelligence program, I think, to where they will send in their flunkies, their Uncle Toms, whatever, be it Dr. King's group or the group of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, to disrupt and to destroy these groups. But they were trying to prevent the birth or the rising of a black messiah. Yes. So they got together, and some people speculate, and I don't want to put too much speculation in this talk, but you hear it in the society that that was one of the things that led to the uh, passing of the expediency of government taking out the life of Dr. King because he was getting too close to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Muslim thinking. You know, in 1967, Dr. King was arrested in a Birmingham jail. You know that Muhammad Ali sent him a telegram? Muhammad Ali sent Dr. King a telegram, and it says, uh, hope that you are comfortable not suffering. Muhammad Ali. See, these are things we need to connect with. Where Muhammad Ali sent Dr. King a letter of support or a telegram. And those of us who are old enough know telegrams were not very long. This is November 2nd, 1967. I'm looking at it. Just go Google it, please. Go Google Dr. King Muhammad Ali telegram. That should be enough for you to find what I'm talking about. They have an actual copy of it where you can read it yourself. A lot of people don't know this either, I don't think, but we're going to share these things. Now, this is not Dr. King directly, but it is his people are not Andy, Julian Bond, 1968. And the Julian Bond, he was down there uh, in Georgia as well. And in 1964, the white delegation of Democrats had promised uh, the African Americans to who were Democrats, the way in 1968 we're going to treat you all right. We're going to bring you into the Democratic Convention, so forth and so on. It was scheduled. It was held in Chicago in 1968, but the white delegation they had it all set up. You know, they could be travel, hotel to be received at the convention with open arms, and they did not bring up the African Americans. They lied to them. They lied to them. So Julian Bond, he's in Chicago trying to figure with his team, not just him by himself, but with his team, trying to figure out how we're going to get our people up. I mean, the white Democrats made it because they took care of them, but the rest of them, uh, they were on their own. So while Julian Bond is there, he run into this guy. I can't think of his name right now. You can find all this online. Please look it up. And Julian Bond, he runs into this gentleman who worked for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And so he got them hotels, and Julian Bond said, "No, they won't let us in the hotel. We tried already." But the guy, guess he's from Chicago. You know, they worked something out, got the hotel for him. Then Julian Bond said, "Well, how are we gonna pay for it?" The guy said, "Go talk to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad." This is 1968. Julian Bond went and spoke with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. You know, I first heard this story years and years ago, over and over again, from Imam Muhammad Sadiq. Because at the time, Imam Muhammad Sadiq was in New York. He was the director of the schools of the University of Islam. They called him Director Clark, or DC. He was under Minister Louis Farrakhan, was the minister there in Harlem, New York. And so it just so happened that when Julian Bond went to the house to get support from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, they were having a meeting of the educators, the directors from around the country were there at the house. So when Julian Bond came by and made the appeal, he was told to come back the next day and he would get an answer. And when Julian Bond came in, Elijah Muhammad told him, said, well, this is not really my money. This is my community's money. I have to ask him, and we have a representative body here. So Elijah Muhammad went around and asked each person there one at a time. And long story short, Elijah Muhammad gave Julian Bond the money. Go Google this too. Write this down. Write this down. The story can now be told. It came out in the late 90s, but Julian Bond was able to finally tell the story how the Honorable, and y'all get this, how this is how he wrote it, how the Honorable Elijah Muhammad helped or saved the Democratic Party. Now, you ain't going to find this on CNN, MSNBC, and you definitely ain't going to find it on Fox. But I'm telling you history. The civil rights movement came to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, not just for this money, but oftentimes he would give money to bail out Dr. King's people from jail who had been protesting and got locked up. They came to various people, and one of them was the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He gave money quietly to the civil rights cause. And so Julian Bond said he got that money. Now, Imam Muhammad Sadiq, he told me, he said, I can't remember the exact amount, but he said about $40,000, 1968, from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. But when I talked to Julian Bond, before he passed away, he passed to Indianapolis, and I personally asked him about that. He said, yes, sir. He said, yes, sir. He said, at that time, I had not seen that much money. At one time in my life, he gave us $3,000. I'm like, whoa, that's a big difference now. Imam Muhammad Sadiq said it was like 40,000, if not more, and Julian Bond saying 3,000. But the point, either way it goes, the point being made, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave money to the Democrats or the African American Negroes who had been betrayed by their own Democratic people and left on their own. but it was the Honorable Elijah Muhammad that gave him money. Now, just on a little side note, I was in LA one time and I gave both numbers. I gave 3,000 and gave the 30,000, 40,000. And the brother in the audience, he told me, he said, I was there with Nada Ali. It was more like $40,000 that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave to the delegation from Georgia. They had been left out, promised by the Democratic Party, but left out as far as being accommodated to come to the 1968 convention and Democratic convention in Chicago. So these are things that we need to know, that they work together on housing. They, meaning the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Martin Luther King, they had began the plan, but then Dr. King was soon thereafter assassinated. Muhammad Ali, he's sending um, um, telegrams on behalf of Dr. King, encouraging him. And Dr. King came out in support of Muhammad Ali when they were trying to get Muhammad Ali through all his blues. Dr. King came out in support of Muhammad Ali and said, whatever he believed in, what he believed in, with the man, he has the right to protest or not to go to the army. So Dr. King was changing his tune now, not changing his tune, that's disrespectful. Dr. King had adjusted his conversation now to say that Vietnam was wrong. He said, I cannot continue to criticize wrong racism, the oppression in my own country, and then see my own country being involved somewhere else. So Dr. King was getting into other areas. That's what Imam Muhammad was saying earlier, that when Dr. King went outside of the area he had mastered, then Allah took him away. And the same for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. When he got outside of his area of what he mastered, Allah took him away. But and as the Imam said, they both come together in him and the Imam Muhammad. What time we got? 7:58. Okay, let me see. There's a letter. Oh, I don't have it handy. Oh, goodness. But it was written by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to the civil rights leaders, saying, let's come together on what we have in common. And he said, don't need to call the press or the media. We can meet wherever you want to meet, and let us come together. So we have wise leaders in Dr. King. We have wise leaders in the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Imam Muhammad, Malcolm X. We have wise leaders. And we have to look at the continuity. We as students, and this year now in 2024, we should have some of us with the energy, the mental energy, to go back and look at the continuity, the flow of the information, of the leadership, of the advancement toward our freedom, and to link these men and women together as well, and to show the connections that we have. Okay.
Assalamualaikum.
Alaikum salam.
I don't know how much time you're going to be on. I just wanted to find out if you still wanted my input. I have to go to work in the morning.
Oh, Sister Halima.
I was on 5.
Yes, ma'am. We have Sister Halima Muhammad Ali. She is the granddaughter of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. She was there, as a matter of fact, when Dr. King and his wife, Coretta Scott King, came to the house. Sister Halima, anything you want to share with us, is yours. The floor is yours.
Yes. Assalamualaikum, everyone. I didn't know if brother could recognize I was on the call or not. I had to speak up. Pardon me for the interruption.
No, that's okay.
Yes. I would go back to the first visit that I saw. There was one before this one. But I was, from the age of 12 and a half until the passing of both my grandparents, I worked at their house right after school, in our school then called Muhammad University of Islam. And I and my cousin Okaya, Uncle Emmanuel's daughter, we were in class at school, and someone came into the room, and they called us out, the two of us. They said, your grandfather wants you all to come over to the house right away. Dr. King is coming, and he needs you all to set up the living room reception for them. So when they pulled us out, it probably was sometime right after 12 in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
And we were brought over to the house to help to prepare things for the meeting, because that meeting was to be separate between Dr. King and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in his living room, while the guests, his wife, Coretta King, and also the other guests were having their meal. So we came, we were polishing the best silver, we were setting up the tray with water, coffee, cream, and sugar, and whatever else needed, and everything. The best silver was polished and prepared, and it was ready. So when Dr. King came, the two of them went into that living room, and that living room, I don't know with the new person there now if she removed it or not, but there's two hidden doors that rarely were closed in that mansion, and it closed off the living room from the rest of all the rooms on the first level. So before the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Dr. King went into that space to have their conversation, their meeting, my grandfather turned to my grandmother and said, girl, you take care of the table. That was his name for her, girl. He said, you take care of the guests here at the table. So she nodded her head, and they went in and closed the door. And about this time, it was probably between 3:30 and 4 o'clock. That was about the time that they would start gathering for the dinner.
Mm-hmm.
So we went on and served the dinner. And it was at least 2.5 or 3 hours later. And can you still hear me?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am. I can hear you well.
Okay, I'm going to have to listen to the call. So at pretty much 2 hours later, you were looking at stuff. You know, the sky wasn't dark yet, but it was getting there.
Mm-hmm.
And so when the two of them came out, and by that time the meal had been served, and the coffee and the dessert was last thing on the table. And so when he came in, they both were excited and smiling. And he introduced the Honorable Elijah Muhammad introduced him to the guests at the table. And he said, dear brothers and sisters, he said, I want you to meet the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And both of them were standing at the head of the table. Dr. King was a little space away. There's a little area by the fireplace in that dining room, and he stood there. And he threw his hands out and bowed his head and said, good evening. And I never forgot that, because I was only an arm's distance from him, and I was totally excited. Mm-hmm. And his wife was so beautiful. And he said a few words and said they had a good meeting. And then just before, because they were leaving, he and his wife had to leave. And so before he left, he said, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, brother, he said, I'll get our people on this side. He said, and you go out there and shout it from the mountaintop. That's his title. That's what he said. That's a quote. All of it is pretty much a quote. And all I know is that it was so exciting. I'll never forget it. I was 15, and the following year they murdered him. Yes, you know what year? I think it was 68. You said 68. I think he was murdered in 68.
It was, yes. April 4th, 68. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I was going to say it wasn't 60 because he was murdered the next year, and we had a TV on in the kitchen, in the dining area, and it had doors over it. You could open it up. It was in a case. And as we watched it, all I knew is I stood there and just cried. I feel like I'm standing there right now and just cried my eyes out. They had murdered this wonderful man. And going back to when I actually looked at him when he was standing there in that dining room, I actually saw his aura. I know some of you all may have that experience, some of you don't. But I saw the amber light around the brother. And I've never seen two men so happy in my life. And I was happy because as a girl, I wanted Dr. King to be okay. And I wanted our people to stop being abused and beaten up.
Right.
And then I remember just before that meeting, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was watching on TV how they were fighting for something. I forget what that particular march was. And he was speaking to him vicariously, if you will, through the TV. He said, brother, you don't have to hurt your people like that. He said, if you want to hurt the white man, hurt him in his pocket. He probably told him that. I don't know if he did or not, but I can just tell you it was a special moment. I'll never forget it. I thank Allah for the experience. It endeared me to him. And on the Lifeline yesterday, I shared with them, and it's my final word. From my experience in watching this, being old enough to put all the pieces together, and knowing more about it as I grew up, I would say that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., they were our bridges over troubled water.
That's right.
Peace out. Assalamu
alaikum. Sister Halima, I don't know if anybody wanted to ask you a question or not, because you got first-hand experience. Do you have a minute or two in case someone want to ask you a question on what you just spoke about?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So everybody who's listening, you take your phone off mute if you have a question or comment for our sister Halima, because she says she may have to leave soon. So if you have anybody on Facebook, if you want to type in your question, one brother, he sent you the greeting, Brother Abdul Qadir on Facebook. He sent you the greeting, Sister Halima. But it's good to have people with us. We need to document all of this history. And don't think it's not important. It is super important. We're so busy right now. Even this Talim, though it may say it's small, it's not small in the big picture, because we're so busy making the history. You know, who's going to maybe one day watch this YouTube, because we own StreamYard.com. Very good product. It will make a YouTube of this. So this has been documented on my Facebook for a few days, but it'll be on the YouTube under my name, Michael Mikael Sahir. And so this is a good time to have. If you have any questions to ask her, just feel free at any time. There's a couple more things I wanted to mention here too. Sister Rosa Parks, I'd like to mention her as well. Sister Rosa Parks, and I know Imam Muhammad went to her funeral. It was during Ramadan. I remember that because Brother, I guess okay to say, Brother Daniel Mujahid from Detroit, he had got things set up for Imam Muhammad to come to the funeral, and myself and Imam Muhammad Sadiq, we drove up from Indianapolis to be there also at the funeral. As we know, a few years before that, Imam Muhammad, he had met with Dr. King's son, Martin Luther III, and Rosa Parks. You can find a picture of them. They took a picture together. She died in 2005, so I don't know the timeline when they met. But Imam Muhammad, he spoke very highly of her as well. So these connections are very important for us. And also, I want to read a comment from Imam Muhammad. This is from the very last Juma that we had with Imam Muhammad. It was in Detroit again at the National Convention, August 29th, 2008. And Imam Muhammad, he was speaking about how Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon the Prophet, was sent to establish good character. And he says, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said that he was sent expressly to do what? Answer, to establish good character. If we remain in touch with that inherent movement in our soul, in our mind, in our whole life, for human excellence, we will constantly show growth and improvement in human character. When Dr. Martin Luther King said he hoped or he believed and he expected a day would come, he showed faith in it when no man will not be judged by the color of his skin, but by the content of his character. You might ask the question, isn't that what Dr. King said? And man, he's speaking now on Dr. King, right? He says, was not he in line with the excellent model of Christ Jesus and Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him? Yes, he was. He was Imam, this is Imam Muhammad speaking now, referring to Dr. King. He was speaking from that essence, his Christ. He was speaking from his Christ essence. He was speaking from his Muslim essence when he said that the day would come when a man will not be judged by the color of his skin, but by the content of his character. That day is here now. So Imam Muhammad is speaking, and he's showing Dr. King is speaking in that Christ spirit essence, which Imam Muhammad was saying was also the essence of Muhammad the Prophet. This is what Ali just said about Dr. King. Now, if we go back to what Imam Muhammad said in 1979, he says that what his father and Dr. King had done, Imam Muhammad said, it is in him. Now this is, keep in mind, dear people, we got, just look at it and we can analyze it as we go. This right here is like 10 days before the Imam passed away. And for those of us who are students, we really following the Imam thinking and the progress and Allah's hand in all this. 10 days before the Imam passed, this is what the Imam points us to. So don't let people divide us from an excellent human model as people. Some are Muslims, some are Christians. Some may even call themselves so-called atheists. But if they are connected with that human excellence, that model, and it's coming in, as Imam said, the Prophet Muhammad was sent to establish good character. Do not divide these things. Don't allow our enemy to put us in different camps. So the last thing I want to say, now this right here is a total Michael Sahir thinking comment. So no one told me this, so you can totally accept it or totally reject it. And I hurt my feelings. But I was looking one day, a few years back, and I was looking at the initials for Martin Luther King. I said MLK. Martin Luther King, MLK. And then I said, wait a minute. If I take the MLK from English, again, this is a microcycle thing. You can accept it or reject it. I said, you take the English letters MLK and convert them to Arabic letters, you get Meme, Lamb, Calf. Wait a minute. Meme, Lamb, Calf, that's Malik. And Malik means king. Now, this is just me. I don't think that's a coincidence. Malik. And then you got Malcolm X. He changed his name to Malik, right? If you know it's his full name. His name he chose, El-Haj Malik Al-Shabazz. I don't see it as a coincidence. I'm not trying to get spooky. I ain't trying to get nothing started. Yes, I am getting something started. I ain't trying to get nobody off point, but I'm like, I don't see this as a coincidence. MLK, mean lamb calf, both mean Malik, king. Malik means king. So take it for what it's worth. Maybe you can get more from it than me. We have pictures, dear people, of Dr. King's men, Andy Young, uh, Abernathy, Hosea Williams, all coming together, posing with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, hand on hand, making a pact. These kind of things just don't get out into the news. I guess the reason for it, because it's saving it for us so we can do something with it. So we can get out there and do something with it. Inshallah. But I'm going to close out. If there are any other comments or questions, you can ask. Thank you, Sister Halima, for your contribution, because can nobody give that but you. And we have to show our respect, take our hats off, and nod our head in appreciation for that wonderful history. So if there's no question or comments, we will wrap this up for the evening. And inshallah, we come back next Tuesday. Brother Fareed said, Alhamdulillah, said he loved it. Yes, sir. We cannot stop now. So we need to share this kind of information with our non-Muslim family and friends. Show the connections. Show the continuity. Show where the enemy of all of us has tried to divide us upon unnatural, man-made boundaries. Hold on. Excuse me. Say that again. Our enemies are trying to divide us, Muslims from the Christians, etc., based upon unnatural, man-made, artificial boundaries. So no, we can't go for that. Imam Muhammad, this will be my last point. Imam Muhammad, on a few occasions, 4 or 5, maybe more, but 4 or 5 that I'm familiar with, he told us about this figure, or this man, I say figure, in the time of Moses. His name was Dathan. Like the word Nathan, I mean the name Nathan, but change the N, the first letter N to a D, Dathan. Dathan was he was just like Moses. He was a Hebrew just like Moses, but he was living what we would call a house Negro. Uncle Tom is what we call him nowadays. And whatever Moses would try to do to bring us to freedom, Dathan always had something to say about it, to try and go against Moses' plan. And Imam Muhammad, he was sharing it with us because he said that Dathan spirit is in some of us, even some of us who are Muslim or claim to be Muslim. So go look up Dathan. Go find out what Imam Muhammad said about Dathan. Go look up Dathan. Yes, you'll see. You'll see some things. So I think there's much more that we could cover, but I think we covered enough for tonight. I think we covered enough for tonight because there's just so much more. Even Malcolm going down to Selma, Alabama, when Dr. King was locked up. Malcolm, he approached Coretta Scott King saying that he wanted to give a message to her husband. Her husband, he did meet Malcolm later on, but he was he told Coretta, he said, Coretta, tell your husband, tell Martin, I'm not down here to cause him any problems. Let me see, can I find it? Let me see. Let me see. Uh, let me see. Let me see here. He said Malcolm related to Coretta that he had not come to Selma to increase any difficulties for her husband, Dr. King. Malcolm's rationalization was that, quote, if white people realize what the alternative is, perhaps they will be more willing to hear Dr. King. White folks have to choose. It's going to be the Muslim voice, the black voice, and Dr. King voice. White folks say we don't want either one of them. Truth be told, but if you gotta take one or the other, it's gonna be Dr. King's voice. So Malcolm said to Coretta, I'm down here really to help your husband. Because when they see me, they're gonna get all nervous and get upset. And they're gonna rush over to your husband. I'm paraphrasing. But we can go on, alhamdulillah. Sister Halima, you like to close us out with prayer, please? If she's still with us.
Yeah.
Go ahead, please.
إلى الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق.
Ameen. All right, people. See you next Tuesday, inshallah. Same phone number, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And inshallah on my Facebook Live. And therefore on YouTube. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum.
All right.
Not stop now.
That's right. God, it's just